France. Il y a 3 jours, la police a interpellé 26 membres présumés de la DZ Mafia.
La DZ Mafia.
La DZ Mafia.
La DZ Mafia est soupçonnée d'être derrière 2 homicides qui ont récemment impliqué des adolescents à Marseille.
Et ces trafiquants de drogue, ils saluent, vous allez le voir aujourd'hui, les services de tueurs à gages au profil très inquiétant. Ils n'hésitent pas à faire appel à des adolescents.
La découverte de cet adolescent, frêle, juvénile, est un véritable choc pour les enquêteurs.
Je vais enchaîner les contrats, frérot, je vais redescendre. Je vais remonter à Paname. Ça va tout baiser, ça. Sur la vie de ma mère, tu vas te jurer, mon sang. Sur la vie de ma mère, tu vas péter un plan.
Sunday, March 12, 2023, Exxon Province. It's 11:30 p.m., and Ryan is sitting on a low wall near the road. He seems to be waiting for someone. Ryan is 23 years old. He deals drugs in the housing projects of Marseille. He has just left his mother's place. He needs to pick something up in La Bousserine, in the 14th district of Marseille. One of his contacts has sent some guys. The car is supposed to come get him soon. 11:49 p.m. By text message, Ryan tells his father he'll try to stop by later that night. Ryan is a young guy who's been mixed up in drug trafficking for a while. He tried to straighten out by working for a company under an apprenticeship contract, but the call of easy money won out. He's known to the police for selling hashish and has already spent a good stretch in prison. But that time behind bars didn't stop him. His parents tried as best they can to keep him from sinking deeper into that world, but nothing works. 11:51 p.m. Ryan sees a dark gray Clio 4 pull up and flash its headlights at him. He gets in the back on the passenger side. The front seat is pushed too far back, forcing him to slide over to the other rear seat, behind the driver. The car takes off toward Marseille. In the front, 2 18-year-old guys. Ryan doesn't know them, but he's used to this. The 3 men start chatting calmly. The atmosphere starts to relax. Ryan takes the opportunity to light a joint. After 10 minutes on the road, the car enters the highway. Then, suddenly, a metallic noise. Ryan looks to the front. The man in the passenger seat is pointing a semi-automatic pistol at him, finger already on the trigger. They're trying to kill him. Ryan panics and pulls out his phone to call his contact. The front passenger, visibly annoyed because his gun jammed, reloads and pulls the trigger again. The gun jams again. Chaos breaks out inside the car. Behind the wheel, the driver tries to stay calm. The passenger reloads once more, but the weapon jams again. Terrified, Ryan finally manages to get his contact on the phone.
Oh, they're trying to off me. What the hell is going on?
His contact tells him to hand the phone to the front. Still reloading, the passenger grabs the phone.
Yeah, it's just the gun jammed, that's all.
Ryan snatches the phone back, trying to explain himself to the man on the other end of the line. The passenger aims at the young man one last time. A bullet leaves the Colt 45, passes through the phone, and lodges in Ryan's skull, who collapses onto the back seat. The driver, thrown off by the chaos, nearly loses control of the car. The passenger orders him to keep driving and empties his magazine into Ryan's lifeless body. He pulls out a can of white spirit he had between his legs and pours it over the still fresh cadaver lying in the back. A pool of blood and fuel starts soaking into the carpet. 30 minutes pass in silence before the car reaches Marseille. 12:30 a.m. The 2 men stop in a parking lot in La Bousserine. They get out of the car, spray the front seats, then set the vehicle on fire. Ryan's corpse still inside. They pull out a phone and record the barbecue. In narco culture, that's what you call burning an empty rival, dead or alive. The video they record will be posted on the killer's Snapchat account. In it, you can see a shot of Ryan's lifeless body from the back and the rear of the car. Written in red text on top, it says, "Here's what happens to anyone who messes with the DZ Mafia's turf." Then a second shot shows the victim's bloodied face before the camera pulls back to frame the blaze consuming the car and Ryan's body. DZ till death. That's what you hear in the music clip added to the video, taken from rapper Lacreme's track Freestyle Tigre 2. The DZ Mafia, that's the name of one of the 2 biggest drug trafficking groups in the Marseille area. According to information gathered by the police in the year leading up to this assassination, Ryan was working with the Yoda clan, the DZ Mafia's greatest enemy. The young man's murder was reportedly ordered that very same day from a French prison by an inmate nicknamed La Brute, a high-ranking member of the DZ Mafia. Ryan's execution is just one more killing in the long string of punitive strikes between the two Marseille clans, a vendetta war that left nearly 50 dead and 110 injured over the course of 2023. A chain of narco killings carried out most of the time by very young men, sometimes even by teenagers. Score settling updated for the age of social media, where executions can be ordered by message on Telegram or WhatsApp and carried out within the hour, and where criminals stage their gruesome acts in an influence war that often plays out on Snapchat or other platforms. Which raises a question. How did we get here? How did this drug trafficking war take root in Marseille? How did this conflict begin, and who is responsible? A large part of this story takes place in the La Paternelle neighborhood. La Paternelle is a district built in the 1950s in Marseille. Back then, it served as a transit housing area, meant to accommodate immigrant populations during decolonization. Large concrete apartment blocks were built, where entire families were crammed into apartments of only 30 square meters. 30 years later, in the early 1980s, the then president, Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, visited La Paternelle and was shocked by the living conditions of its residents. He ordered the neighborhood to be rebuilt. The concrete blocks were replaced with better quality infrastructure. The buildings were painted in bright colors, apartments were larger, trees were planted. La Paternelle seemed to be turning into a fancy neighborhood. But despite all these efforts, the neighborhood was eventually abandoned. Unemployment and poverty continued to rise. Public services were neglected, and the living conditions of residents only worsened. By 2010, drug trafficking had already taken a strong hold in La Paternelle. However, it wasn't until 2016 that this drug trade took on a whole new dimension, when the L2 exit was built just a few hundred meters from the neighborhood, connecting the A7 highway to the A51. This highway junction at the gates of the district greatly facilitated drug trafficking. Revenue from this business skyrocketed, sometimes reaching tens of thousands of euros per day. La Paternelle established itself as a hub for Marseille's drug trade, a hub where 4 dealing points were set up along a stretch of only 500 meters. The 2 most important points were controlled at the top of the Maga or Magasin group, because the dealing point was next to a grocery store, and at the bottom by the Yoda group, named after a graffiti of the Jedi Master from the Star Wars saga, painted on a wall at the entrance of their dealing spot. Despite this setup, the 4 teams managing the 4 dealing points maintained a cordial coexistence. Between 2017 and 2018, after months of surveillance work, the authorities managed to dismantle almost the entire network of the MAGA clan. The vacuum left by the group's disappearance sparked conflicts between several clans trying to take over the dealing point. In the end, it was Karim Harat, aka Rantanplan, one of the top lieutenants of the Bassins clan from a neighboring district, who managed to assert himself and take control of the top spot. Even though Bassins' presence caused tensions between the clans, Rantanplan and his crew succeeded in holding this dealing point. In the following years, despite the 2020 lockdown, the Paternelle drug selling points continued to gain popularity. In 2021, there was even a reference to the bottom dealing point in Jules' track Guadalajara, where he says, "Je fume la faute à Yoda." After a series of internal wars within the Bassins clan, a new boss took control of the top spot. From his arrival in spring 2022, he decided to attack and eliminate the 2 middle points controlled by the Blacks clan. This marked the beginning of a war between the 2 main Paternelle clans, Bassins and Yoda. Throughout 2022, the conflicts escalated. Groups allied with the 2 clans triggered shootings in neighborhood districts. Even though these events didn't directly involve our 2 main groups, tensions kept rising, reaching a point of no return. On January 1st, 2023, at 1:25 a.m., Kalashnikov shots rang out in the district. The Bassins clan targeted a suspicious individual who seemed to be trying to buy a dealing point. In the following weeks, Yoda clan lookouts stopped alerting the rest of the district when police arrived, making arrests at the top spot easier. Tensions between the two clans had never been higher. By February 5th, 2 shootings broke out just 2 hours apart between Yoda and Bassins. It was the first time the two groups attacked each other head-on. Meanwhile, a little under 10,000 kilometers from Marseille, a decisive event, one that will shape the rest of this conflict, is about to unfold. We are in Thailand, more precisely in the south of the country in Phuket. On the evening of February 9th, amid the bustle of the seaside town's nightlife district, a dull beat can be heard leaking out of a nightclub. On the other side of the front door, the place pulses with a throb of the bass. Spotlights sweep mechanically across the dance floor. Huge strobing LED panels light up the stage in alternating flashes. In air thick with mingled smells of alcohol and sweat, the deafening music pouring from the speakers barely allows customers to hear one another. And among all the tourists filling the club, in another corner of the venue, 2 Frenchmen are talking at the bar. On one side, Félix Bangui, known as Le Chat. On the other, Abdelatif Mehdi Laribi, alias Tick. The 2 men, now engaged in conversation, seem to know each other well, and to be on good terms. But as the night goes on, an argument breaks out between them. Voices rise, insults start flying. The clash escalates until Félix Bangui, steeped in drunkenness and arrogance, throws an ice cube at Mehdi Laribi's head. Many agree that this single incident, taking place thousands of kilometers from Marseille, that ice cube toss was the spark that set the powder keg alight, blowing tensions wide open between the 2 major clans of the Phocéan city. Why? Because Félix Bangui and Mehdi Laribi are none other than the respective leaders of the Yoda clan and the Bassins clan. No one really knows how these 2 kingpins of Marseille's drug trade ended up at the same moment on the other side of the world, in the very same nightclub. Some believe the 2 men had arranged to meet to ease tensions between their clans. Others claim they ran into each other by pure coincidence, on vacation at the same time, in the same Thai city, and on the same night, in the same club. As for the reason behind the rift between them, testimonies and perspectives also differ. Some say it was a fight over the division of Patronel's dealing points. A driver working for the Bassins clan claims they argued over a woman they both had their eye on. But even if the exact cause of the dispute is unclear, one thing is certain. This act of disrespect would give Abdelatif Laribi the perfect excuse to launch hostilities once and for all and finally take full control of La Patronelle. The very next day after this altercation in Thailand, a Bassins member is targeted at a dealing point, followed by a Yoda man being shot at in a neighboring district. This marked the beginning of a full-blown vendetta war between Yoda and Bassins. Around that time, the Bassins clan decided to rebrand itself. At the start of 2023, the clan began calling itself the DZ Mafia. DZ refers to Algeria, pronounced Jazair in Arabic, the country of origin for many of the clan's leaders. Very quickly, the DZ Mafia and Yoda became more than just drug trafficking groups. They became brands, even territorial claims in La Patronelle and the surrounding neighborhoods. And the intimidation war that played out in the streets also unfolded on social media, especially Snapchat, where some users openly declare their allegiance to the groups, either directly in videos or in the comments. By February 2023, as this communication war escalated, the shootings continued to intensify, even affecting neighboring districts in the following weeks. March 17th, the Marolette neighborhood, just west of La Patronelle. Next to a makeshift barbecue signaling a dealing point, a few wooden chairs are set out for the dealers to sit while waiting for customers. Streetlights illuminate the roads bordering the square. A few local residents are returning from their day's work, and cars slowly roll down the adjacent boulevard. It's 7:45 p.m., and Mamadou is preparing for a cannabis deal in the neighborhood square. Mamadou is a 21-year-old from Guinea. He arrived in France alone at age 15 and was placed under the care of Marseille's child welfare services. He started attending a vocational high school, but eventually dropped out. In recent years, Mamadou lost his parents and brother in Guinea, leaving him in France, far from everything he had known, completely uprooted from family and cultural ties, still a minor. Mamadou eventually sank into a severe depression that drove him to attempt suicide. He He would later be hospitalized multiple times in the psychiatric emergency department in La Timone. Struggling to get by, Mamadou drifts through life, begging on the streets, losing himself more and more each day to alcohol and cannabis addiction. And this bleak existence ultimately leads him to end up there on March 17, 2023, at a dealing point in La Marlette. Just after completing his transaction, a figure begins crossing the square toward the selling spot. A man dressed in black, bundled in a puffer jacket that hides most of his body, with a ski mask covering nearly his entire face. Moving in an unnatural way, he keeps approaching, eyes locked on Mamadou. 20 meters separate the two men when Mamadou notices the masked individual. Who's that? Mamadou looks at him and starts to worry. Clearly, something's off. Maintaining this stare, the man in black keeps closing in. Suddenly, he opens his puffer jacket to reveal a Kalashnikov. Panic hits Mamadou's mind. At the sight of the assault rifle, he bolts, sprinting madly to escape the armed man. A first burst of gunfire rains down toward Mamadou. Municipal surveillance cameras that captured the scene show him fleeing the La Marlette district, trying to take cover in nearby shops, with the shooter in pursuit. The chase begins on Boulevard Simone Bolivar. Mamadou weaves between moving cars. The masked man, still right behind him, keeps the rifle raised. At irregular intervals, he fires bursts from the Kalashnikov at his target. Screams of terror fill the street. Panicked bystanders flee the gunfire, and drivers pray that no stray bullets hit them in their cars. Mamadou continues trying to find a hiding spot. He spots a lit pharmacy, his chance. He runs to the entrance, but the door is locked. He keeps fleeing, but in his panic, he trips on the sidewalk. The shooter finally catches up. He stops a few meters in front of Mamadou. Mamadou, face contorted with fear, raises his arms in surrender. "Don't move. I'm just here to grab the charcoal." It's another way of referring to drugs. "Don't worry. I'm not going to hurt you. Don't move." Mamadou obeys, staying perfectly still. The masked man drops a magazine on the ground. Time seems to stretch as he struggles to reload his weapon. Sensing that his time has probably come, Mamadou closes his eyes and starts praying. He hears a metallic sound in front of him. His pursuer is ready to fire. A few seconds pass, then a bullet leaves the assault rifle, striking the young man, who collapses on the sidewalk. Surveillance footage then shows the shooter standing over the victim, firing a long series of shots that hit Mamadou's torso and limbs. We then see him step down onto the roadway and point his weapon at a female driver. "Don't move! Open the door!" He gets into the passenger seat. "Stop the car! Drive or I'll kill you!" The driver obeys and continues down the boulevard, the assault rifle aimed at her. After a few minutes, the shooter gets out of the car and heads into the Marlette housing estate. We don't know what he's looking for. He seems to be searching for something at random in the area. He spots a hooded man coming out of a building and suddenly running. The shooter thinks he sees a weapon in the man's hands. He calls out, "Yo!" The man turns around and is immediately hit by a burst of gunfire. He collapses, and the shooter walks up to him, aiming his weapon at him again. The man writhing on the ground appears to be in his 60s, probably a neighborhood father. Clearly disappointed by the profile of his victim, the shooter leaves the old man alive, tucks his weapon back on himself, and leaves Marlette heading toward Castellas. Authorities arrive a few minutes later at the scene of the shooting. Without realizing it, a police car even crosses paths with the shooter, casually fleeing the crime scene, his ski mask in his pocket. He even gives them a small wave as their eyes meet. Later, it would be revealed that Mamadou's murder was actually carried out by a hitman affiliated with the DZ Mafia. The Marlette dealing point had been identified as belonging to the Yoda clan. The shooter arrived at this spot with the goal of assassinating a Yoda member. He observed what appeared to be a drug transaction, identified Mamadou as the dealer for that point, and managed to shoot him. However, according to the police, there is no evidence that Mamadou was part of any clan. His social worker says Mamadou was so psychologically fragile that he was absolutely incapable of working in a network. Had he simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time? It seems so. The same can be said for the second victim that evening. The elderly man gravely injured by the shooter is actually named Kamel, 62 years old. Rushed to the hospital, He came close to death but survived miraculously. After coming out of a coma, he recounted that the night he was shot, he was hurrying to get to the mosque. The object in his hands was not a weapon at all. It was a prayer rug. This murder and everything surrounding it is a stark illustration of the chaos embedded in this clan war, which starts in La Paternelle and gradually spreads to the other northern neighborhoods of Marseille. In this chain of intimidation and vendettas, shootings can be organized within the hour and sometimes even occur in areas frequented by civilians. The situation becomes increasingly unbearable for the police. Armed assaults are almost daily, and it is nearly impossible to predict them. As the violence escalates, the conflict spills over, affecting other quieter neighborhoods in Marseille. After 3 months of war, the night of April 2nd to 3rd stands out as the deadliest night of the entire armed conflict between Yoda and the DZ Mafia. Sunday, April 2nd, Castellas district in the northern neighborhoods. It's evening during Ramadan, and dozens of residents are outside to break their fast and enjoy the festivities. It's 11:25 p.m., and a Clio drives into the district. It moves along the shopping gallery and then stops. Armed men get out of the car and open fire on the shops. More than 50 bullets are fired, shattering the shop windows. The shooting leaves 3 people injured and 2 young men dead. Just minutes later, barely 500 meters away, another series of shots rings out in a district square. 2 more young men are seriously wounded. Shortly after, the attacker's car is found burned 4 kilometers away, near Cap Janet. Firefighters and police officers arriving at the scenes of the 2 shootings are overwhelmed. Very quickly, an investigation is launched to track down the killers. Around 12:45 a.m., while police are coordinating with the Marseille prosecutor's office, authorities are informed of a 3rd shooting, this time in the Joliet neighborhood, right next to downtown Marseille. When they arrive, they find 2 bloodied bodies lying on the ground. Cries and sobs fill the air. Faces are twisted with terror. Panicked residents approach to check whether the victims are someone they know. Throughout the night, during these shootings, the people of Marseille fear they are witnessing terrorist attacks. 20 minutes earlier, Case and Jabril, the 2 Joliet victims, aged 15 and 16, were chatting calmly on the terrace of a snack bar with a 14-year-old friend. At 12:40 a.m., a car stops in front of the snack bar. An armed man gets out and fires a series of shots at the 3 teenagers before quickly getting back in the car and fleeing the scene. The 14-year-old, hit in the arm, manages to escape and hide in an apartment lobby. The other 2, however, die within hours despite medical care. During the night, the judicial police locate the vehicle used in this latest shooting. The car had already been identified by the BRI, the Research and Intervention Brigade, and was actually part of their database under surveillance as a war vehicle. That's how the BRI labels vehicles likely to be used by drug traffickers for drug transfers or settling scores. It appears that the movements of one of these vehicles match those of the car used in the 3rd shooting, a black Peugeot 308 GTI. The car now seems to be in Garan, a town of 20,000 people, 25 kilometers north of Marseille. The BRI quickly organizes a commando operation. At 4 a.m., dozens of police officers locate the vehicle in a small housing estate in Garan. In complete silence, they quietly infiltrate the house, one by one. On the other side of the door, they need to be extremely careful. They are likely facing a group of seasoned killers ready to fight. Avoiding any casualties is absolutely crucial. An officer gently opens the front door. No one is in the hallway, but voices can be heard from another room. Music plays through the walls, and several people are talking in the living room, men and women. The BRI officers quietly enter the house, weapons raised. The voices grow louder. They have to act fast. One officer gives the signal. 3, 2, 1, go. The police rush into the living room. Police, hands up! The residents are caught completely off guard, but the BRI officers are stunned. All the suspects they're pointing their weapons at are just teenagers, a group of young people at a party. It can't be. They must have the wrong house. To be sure, they take the time to search each teenager individually, and one of them has car keys, the keys to the car parked outside. The car matches the description of the Peugeot 308, seen during the Joliet shooting earlier that evening. Inside the car, the automatic pistol used to murder Case and Jabril, the two victims of that shooting. By all logic, it seems the teenager just arrested is the culprit behind this double murder. This teenager is Mattéo, 18 years old, 1.70 meters tall, his face covered in acne, eyes vacant, long hair, and a poorly trimmed beard that hides the contours of his face. Clearly, Mattéo is far from the image one might have of a gang criminal, and yet we would later learn that Mattéo was the person responsible for the highest number of victims in this entire Marseille drug war. In the following days, investigators would discover that Mattéo was actually a hitman working for the DZ Mafia. According to their intelligence, the two men killed in Castellas during the first shooting of the night were members of the DZ Mafia. Mattéo had received orders from one of his DZ Mafia contacts to go to Joliet and carry out swift retaliations. With an accomplice at the wheel, he arrives in front of a snack bar known to the police as a gathering spot for youths linked to the Yoda clan. He gets out of the car and fires without warning at the three teenagers. Two of them were connected to drug trafficking groups, but the third, Case, appears to have been a collateral victim, having nothing to do with this vendetta. After shooting, Mattéo immediately gets back in the car, which leaves the scene. An hour later, he is in Garan, spending the evening with his girlfriend and friends. He is relaxed, there to have a good time. Even knowing what just happened in Joliet, one might really doubt that he was the one behind the 9mm that killed Case and Jabril. Later that night, three men, presumably members of the DZ Mafia, came to see Mattéo and pull him aside to congratulate him on his earlier exploit. When Mattéo returns to his friends, he boasts that he just killed two people, putting 2 bullets in their heads. The contrast between the horror of his murders and his jovial, playful demeanor an hour later is chilling. What is even more disturbing is that his friends aren't even that surprised, as if the extreme violence of Mattéo's actions doesn't shock them in the slightest. April 6, 2023, 3 days after his arrest. It's 11:30 a.m. and police cars drive through the residential streets of Garan, finally parking in front of a 3-story house with red roof tiles and white shutters. A garden, a terrace, a pool with lounge chairs, a tree overlooking the roof. The house looks like the perfect place to enjoy the sunny southern French climate. 7 investigators from the criminal brigade get out of the cars, accompanied by sniffer dogs, and approach the house. At the end of the line, handcuffed and escorted by 2 officers, is young Mattéo. The house the judicial police enter is his, or rather, it belongs to his mother and stepfather. No one is there to greet the police convoy, but that doesn't matter. They're here to search the premises. In Enzo's room, Matteo's little brother, they find shoes on the floor that belong to him. Nike TNs in green, pink, and purple.
These 2 pairs are mine. I know I was wearing one of these when I did La Marolette. And this one?
An investigator shows a 3rd pair of Nikes.
That's the pair I wore at La Peda and for all the others. And this?
The investigator points to a black and white decathlon tracksuit.
That's the one I wore at La Peda and at Poitiers. And this jacket? It's mine. I wear this jacket under my puffer for everything I've done.
Mattéo is here talking about other murders he committed before Joliet. La Marolette, La Paternelle, the Eugene Poitiers housing estate. These are the places where he says he killed people. Later, the police would connect these 3 half-admitted crimes to killings that took place over the previous 3 weeks. La Paternelle, that's where Ryan's charred body was found in a parking lot. La Marolette, that's where surveillance cameras captured a masked man chasing and shooting young Mamadou on the sidewalk of Boulevard Simon Bolivar. Watching the footage of this murder again, the dark figure emptying his magazine on the victim, that silhouette perfectly matches Matteo's profile. And finally, in the Eugene Poitiers estate, it was in this neighborhood of the 3rd arrondissement that Adler's body was found on March 22nd in the parking lot of a private residence. In the days following his arrest, investigators were stunned as they gradually realized the killings carried out by the acne-covered teenager they had arrested. During interrogations, Mattéo was very talkative. According to him, he was responsible for several shootings that occurred over the past 4 weeks. At that point, the police estimated that Mattéo could have been directly involved in 7 or even 8 shootings. Unfortunately for the investigators, Mattéo would say no more about the details of these murders and refused to talk about his contacts within the DZ Mafia. During April, Mattéo was incarcerated at the Draguignan Detention Center before being transferred to the prison in Grasse. There, he was kept in isolation, and for good reason. His sudden rise to notoriety. In the months following the start of his detention, the newspaper La Parisienne revealed to all of France the existence of this teenage hitman, who turned out to be one of the deadliest killers of our time. A video that Mattéo had posted on social media also surfaced, a video in which he boasts about carrying out multiple assassination contracts, and it was broadcast on every television channel during the second half of May.
Voilà, je vais enchaîner les contrats, frérot, je vais redescendre. Le soir, je vais remonter à Paname. Ça va tout baiser, ça. Sur la vie de ma mère, tu vas te jurer, mon sang. Sur la vie de ma mère, tu vas péter un plomb. Sur la vie de ma mère, à dire, je me suis en train de m'envoyer sur un contrat, je suis en train de rigoler.
In prison, Mattéo would spend 8 months before a new interrogation was organized. On December 4th, 2023, investigators had 2 goals in mind: to solve 3 murders linked to Mattéo and to track down the masterminds behind these killings hiding within the DZ Mafia. At the start of the interrogation, Mattéo talks about his family.
I'm in prison for murders with an S. They didn't expect me to be arrested for stuff like this. I don't really have much contact with my family since I got in here.
The police get straight to the point. They question him about the 3 murders and his affiliation with the DZ Mafia. And just like 8 months earlier, Mattéo shuts down. He categorically refuses to speak on these subjects. After several days of questioning without a single confession, the investigators decide to try a tactic.
You know, Mattéo, I was thinking about your little brother Enzo.
Matteo's attention is immediately piqued.
Well, see, we found his DNA on the clothes used in the murders. And right now, he's in custody with some of my colleagues.
Mattéo glares at the officer. What the policeman says is true. Enzo, Matteo's little brother, has indeed been arrested. He is suspected of helping his brother cover up some of his crimes, notably by burning cars used in the murders.
At the PJ, we think he helped you during your missions. We think he's your accomplice, and I'll tell you this. Personally, I think it goes further than that. Maybe he's the real killer in all these cases. Actually, I think we got the wrong brother. You didn't do anything. You just tried to cover for him, making us believe you were the shooter.
Mattéo loses his temper.
No, my little brother. He's just a dumb kid. He's never even seen a Kalashnikov in his life. I swear, I never told him to do anything. He has nothing to do with this. You're going to ruin his life for nothing.
The investigators have managed to create a crack. They're going through. For several hours, they keep pressing Mattéo, and eventually, he breaks.
All right, fine. I'll talk.
Mattéo begins recounting, one by one, the murders he committed. The murder of Ryan, it was him. With a casual and completely detached demeanor, he retraces the events of that night. With his accomplice at the wheel, they drove from Marseille to Aix-en-Provence, having been ordered to pick up and kill a Yoda dealer. When they arrived at the given address, Ryan was waiting. He got into the car and would never get out.
5 minutes before, we stopped to lock the doors with the child safety lock so he couldn't escape. So he wouldn't jump out of the moving car. When he got in, the doors were already locked and the gun was already loaded.
He had also carefully pushed his seat back as far as possible to force Ryan to sit in a spot where he would be an easy target. Mattéo continues his story. Calmly, he explains how his weapon jammed several times, how Ryan panicked at the prospect of his imminent death, and how he eventually shot the young man in the back seat. Investigators already knew Mattéo was behind several murders, but the indifference with which he recounts his killings is chilling. Despite this, the police managed to keep their composure, remaining impassive.
Was the drive fast? Yeah, there was a dead guy in the back.
Mattéo recounts the events as if someone had simply asked him to describe the plot of a movie, and he is just as detached when he talks about the murder at La Marolette. The hooded man seen on the surveillance footage, it was him.
Early evening, before the sun went down, around 6 to 7 p.m., I was at Castellas. I got there, went to the train station, then down by the tracks. I picked up a Kalashnikov in the grass. It was hidden in the bushes. I grabbed it, There were 2 full magazines. I took one on me and loaded the other. I chambered around, hit the AK on me and zipped my jacket back up.
Then, once he arrived at La Marolette, he explains,
The target was the dealer. I saw a transaction with customers, so I figured out who the dealer was. I was maybe 20 meters away. I don't know my target. I only knew I had to kill the dealer. I got closer. He looked at me weird. He must have realized I was walking with a gun. I fired a burst, but he took off running, so I chased him while shooting.
When Mattéo finally caught up to Mamadou after the chase, his magazine was empty.
I was 4 or 5 meters max from him. It was black. I'd never seen him before. I dropped my empty magazine, tossed it on the ground to my left. I pull out the second one, load it. He starts praying. I give him a few seconds, then I shot. He collapsed.
Then, during his escape, he recounts how he shot Kamel, the elderly man who was heading to the mosque.
I thought he had a gun and that he was doing security for the dealers. I yelled, "Yo!" and when he turned around, I fired a burst. I got over him to finish him off, but I saw he was just a dad, an old guy who had nothing to do with anything, so I didn't finish him. I left, went back to the archway to see if there was any more guys on the spot. Anyone besides the dealer. I wanted to cause damage. Anyway.
During questioning, Ahmed, Matteo's accomplice in several of the murders, would recount how frightening the young killer was. Ahmed was present for Ryan's death. He was the one driving, and he was also there for another deadly shooting in the 3rd District of Marseille. Tuesday, March 21st, 2023, just 4 days after Mamadou's murder. In the evening, a Clio comes to pick up Ahmed. In the front seats are Yanis and Nazim, the 2 drivers for the mission. The 3 of them head to Garan to pick up the last member of the operation.
One of us was informed about the mission. It was the guy who killed Ryan.
Ahmed doesn't even dare say Matteo's name in front of investigators. For this operation, Mattéo was the only one told in advance about the mission order.
We went to the 14th District, to a housing project I didn't know, to pick up a weapon. One of the passengers got out, grabbed a Glock, and handed it to me saying, "Here, this is for you." As soon as I saw it, I panicked. I understood they were going to involve me in a crime. They told me, "Get ready."
Up to this point, Ahmed had never killed anyone. He had only ever been a driver, but that night, for the first time, he would have to shoot someone. He would become a murderer. The group arrives in front of the Eugene Potier residence in the 3rd District. This is where the assassination will take place. It is 11 p.m. when Mattéo receives the profile of the target, a black man who will soon leave the residence on a black T-Max scooter. Weapons in hand, Mattéo and Ahmed step out of the vehicle and wait for their future victim. After a few moments, the gate begins to open, and the 2 armed young men immediately slip into the parking lot. As described, their target is right there, on his T-Max, a motorcycle helmet on his head. The target is Adler. Adler is 21 years old. He was born in Marseille and had already been incarcerated at age 17 for drug trafficking. He works for the Félix Piat Network, a major organization in the 3rd District known for cocaine trafficking and for recruiting young men from Comorian immigrant backgrounds. Less than a year after his first detention in a juvenile facility, he was arrested again and sent back to prison. In the years following his last release, his mother says he showed no sign of continuing to work for Piat. He seemed to have completely stopped. But that wouldn't prevent him from finding himself on this Tuesday night, face to face with Ahmed and Mattéo, who are ready to open fire on him. When Adler sees the 2 boys step into the residence and stop right in front of him, he immediately brakes hard on his scooter. Mattéo raises his weapon and fires. Adler instinctively ducks and avoids the bullet. He abandons his scooter and runs away as fast as he can. A second bullet hits him in the back. He loses balance and collapses to the ground. Next to Mattéo, Ahmed completely panics.
I saw he was going after him non-stop, so I figured I had to shoot too, but pretend. I started pulling the trigger. 6 or 7 rounds went off. I was aiming to the right of the victim, shooting into the ground, into the cars.
Adler is on the ground, screaming with all his strength.
Help! Help me!
He tries to get back up, but it's impossible. He's losing blood, losing strength, and keeps crying out for help. Horrified, Ahmed flees back to the car. Mattéo, meanwhile, keeps his mission in mind. He walks up to his victim and, without the slightest hesitation, empties a 15-round magazine into Adler's body.
I could still hear him breathing. He was agonizing. I didn't want him to stay half alive. I wanted to kill him. I took out the magazine, put 2 rounds in it, and put it back. I racked the slide, stood over him, bent down, and shot him at point-blank range.
Mattéo gets back into the car and lashes out at his accomplice.
He wasn't dead. He wasn't dead. You're useless. You had a whole magazine and you shot next to him. After that, he asked me why I ran away. I told him I wasn't made for that kind of thing. I was completely stressed out.
Even within the DZ Mafia, Mattéo terrifies many. Some praise him for his composure, but others fear him because of it. But can we really even call it composure? In all of these cases, Mattéo seems to have no grasp of reality. For him, killing people appears to be just another job. So of course, the question inevitably arises. How did Mattéo become this hitman completely numb to violence? In what kind of environment could he have grown up for murder and vendettas to become so trivial to him? Mattéo Frederic Jesus was born on June 6, 2004, into a Catholic family that had just moved to the Marseille region. He already had 2 older brothers, aged 4 and 9, and 2 years later, a younger brother, Enzo, would be born. When Mattéo was only 6 years old, his father left the home overnight.
His mother would later recount, "With Mattéo, it was difficult very early on. In elementary school, he was bullied. It was already hard for him. He struggled with having been abandoned by his father when he was so young. The whole family suffered from that. His father drove us crazy."
Since he was 6 years old, Mattéo had been suffering. In the years that followed, Matteo's mother met a new partner, a CEO of a major real estate company, who invested himself in the family and with whom she had 2 more children. Thanks to her new companion's wealth, Mattéo and his family moved to small towns around Aix-en-Provence, first in the village of Colas, then in a small town near Ventabren, and eventually in the large house in Garan, less than 25 kilometers north of Marseille. Mattéo never seemed to lack anything, and contrary to the usual image of a narco-trafficker, he grew up far from Marseille's drug trafficking neighborhoods. During interrogation, he complained about his complicated relationship with his stepfather.
"I met him when I was 6, and at first everything was fine, but when he had his own kids, it made a big difference between us. As I grew up, our relationship got more distant. There was still respect between us, but nothing more."
In middle school, Mattéo was a restless student, the kind you see everywhere. He would get into small mischief here and there, once got involved in a minor fight. Nothing serious, according to those around him, just typical teenage trouble. When Mattéo was 13, his mother and stepfather separated. She suddenly found herself raising 4 children alone, including a Mattéo who was becoming more and more uncontrollable. At age 14, Mattéo spent the summer in Corsica with his father, with whom he had reconnected a year earlier. He saw those holidays as an opportunity to rebuild a strong bond with him. Unfortunately, Mattéo returned from that summer deeply disappointed and frustrated. He had placed enormous expectations on those 2 months in Corsica, but his father proved completely unworthy of them. After those holidays, his father vanished from Mattéo's life once again. After he returned home, Mattéo slid into delinquency. While in 9th grade, he began running away from home regularly, stopped going to school, and started selling hashish. He was arrested multiple times by the police: drug possession, carrying a knife, insulting an officer, property damage, resisting arrest. Each time officers brought him back home, he ran away again and kept piling up offenses. On the advice of a social worker, Mattéo's completely overwhelmed mother decided to place him in a youth home in Salon de Provence. But there, the same thing happened. Mattéo ran away and kept selling drugs, this time in Salon de Provence.
"I was selling resin, weed, and coke for a network. I didn't even try to know who I was selling for. I just took my money and left. I was making around 200 euros a day."
At 15, he was incarcerated for 3 months in the juvenile detention center of La Valentine in Marseille. Shortly after leaving prison, he got involved in a fight in front of his high school, a fight during which he pulled a knife from his pocket to confront other teenagers. Fortunately, no one was injured, but this altercation earned Mattéo another stay in the same juvenile facility in La Valentine, this time lasting 15 months. In February 2021, Mattéo regained his freedom. He was 16 years old and had already spent a year and a half of his life in prison. But that did absolutely nothing to discourage him from sinking deeper into delinquency. As soon as he was released, he bought 17,000 euros worth of cannabis and fully intended to build up his own network to sell his stock. Only 2 months after his latest prison stay, in April 2021, Mattéo was stopped by the police in the Paris region. After an argument during one of his deals, he ended up cornered in a dead-end street, chased by men armed with shotguns. Everyone involved was arrested. On Mattéo, police found a large quantity of cannabis and a 9mm handgun. He was immediately indicted for drug trafficking and imprisoned for the third time, this time in the Vieille Pinte detention center in Seine-Saint-Denis. After a year, he was released under judicial supervision. But Mattéo carried on as before. Only 2 months later, he was arrested again by the anti-crime brigade in Vitry-sur-Seine with cannabis in his possession. One thing had become obvious. Mattéo had no intention whatsoever of ending his life as a drug trafficker. Prison had absolutely no deterrent effect on him. To him, it seemed to be nothing more than a temporary setback in his ambition to make a name for himself in the world of narco-crime. At no point did he show any remorse for his actions. In his mind, he already saw himself as a future big-time criminal. After being arrested in Vitry on June 20th, 2022, Mattéo was taken to the Créteil courthouse. But just as he was about to be led inside, he took advantage of a moment of inattention from the officer watching him and bolted at full speed. He climbed onto the roof of a police car and scaled the courthouse wall. At that moment, a local resident began filming the scene, capturing the young man, dressed entirely in white, running along the top of the wall, 1 foot in front of the other, arms outstretched for balance. After a few seconds of tightrope walking, he jumped down into the street outside the courthouse grounds. But he barely had time to start running before he was caught and tackled to the ground by a police officer. The video of the escape attempt spread across social media and TV channels, earning Mattéo the nickname Jack Sparrow. Mattéo didn't care about the consequences. He just wanted to be seen as a bandit, a real criminal. Right after being tackled and handcuffed, he started acting tough.
Take the cuffs off me. Go on, tell your boys to step outside. Take off your belt, one-on-one. I'll fuck you up. I don't give a fuck about your job, you son of a bitch.
Mattéo was sentenced to 7 months in prison for continuing his drug trafficking, plus an additional 2 months for escape and insulting an officer. This means that between the ages of 15 and 18, Mattéo lived only a few months outside of French prisons. This time, he was incarcerated at Fresnes prison in the Val-de-Marne, and it was here, in one of France's largest detention centers, that Mattéo would finally cement his entry into the criminal underworld. In this facility, petty offenders can end up mingling with top dogs from some of the most powerful criminal organizations in the country. And this is how Mattéo met one of them. While he was still behind bars, police recorded a phone call between Mattéo and his girlfriend.
I met a guy in prison, and I got in good with him. I would go to the yard with him, work out with him. I was with him all the time.
This man, whose identity is still unknown today, would become his protector, Mattéo's mentor on his dizzying descent into narco-criminality. On December 11, 2022, Mattéo walked out of Fresnes prison. His older brother came to pick him up and take him back down south to the family home in Garan. His investigating judge had decided it would be wise to remove him from the Paris region, where he had built up contacts, and send him back to his family instead. In January 2023, while tensions between the DZ Mafia and Yoda were beginning to escalate in the Marseille suburbs, Mattéo was quietly living at his mother's and stepfather's house. They had gotten back together. With his repeated runaways, group home placements, and 3 stints in prison, Mattéo hadn't actually lived under the same roof as his family for more than 3 years. So at home, everyone wanted to help Mattéo get back on the right track. At first, everything went well. He renewed his ID papers, started the paperwork to get his driver's license, and grew closer to his younger brother, Enzo. Maybe Mattéo would finally be able to rebuild a normal life, far from violence, far from crime, far from prison bars. Unfortunately, you and I both know the story doesn't end there. Enzo saw his older brother quickly fall back into his old habits.
At first, he was there, making an effort to be with the family, but he had skipped too many steps, and then he started being absent. He wasn't home for dinner. When he came back, I thought I'd found the Mattéo from my childhood again. But no, he had changed in the end. Apparently, when he was in Paris, he was already doing things for the network. He didn't show up in Garan as little Mattéo.
Very quickly, Mattéo goes back to dealing. He even begins climbing the ranks and takes over the management of a dealing spot in Garan, in the historic district of the town. Mattéo is fairly satisfied with this new business, even if he doesn't find it very impressive for now.
It was making 400 or 500 euros a day max. It was just so I could have my own spot, so the little guys from my area could work for me.
When he runs out of merchandise, Mattéo gets in touch with the mentor he met in Friend Prison. The mentor supplies him with hash and weed that he can resell through his Garan network. Enzo often sees him come home with new designer clothes, bought with the profits he's making from his spot.
At first, when he came back from Paris, he had the same pair of TNs every day and some joggers, but Mattéo didn't care. Then people made fun of him, so he tightened up and went to Foot Locker and bought several pairs of TNs. He must have had at least 15. After that, in Garan, people liked him because he had money.
But all these new purchases seriously worry his mother.
I naively believed he had fallen back into a small-time network because I could see he was buying clothes and things like that. Of course, it didn't make me happy, but I didn't really know what to do. I told myself he'd get caught. He'd end up back in prison. I kept an eye on him. I asked Enzo if he was getting into trouble.
Getting into trouble, Matteo's mother truly has no idea how deeply her son has sunk into the world of drug trafficking. How could she possibly suspect that at that point, her child was working for one of the biggest criminal gangs in Marseille? Criminals with whom he was starting to have problems, actually.
When it came time to pay my supplier, supposedly some money was missing, and from there, they invented a debt for me. They told me, it's simple, now if you want to settle your debt, you're doing a mission for us.
And this is when Mattéo begins getting involved with the teams in charge of assassinating members of the rival clan. His mentor, who appears to be a senior figure within the DZ Mafia, forces him into the world of contract killers. He becomes a pawn, serving the gang as they wage a vendetta war against the Yoda clan. During his first mission, Mattéo is assigned the role of driver.
I had to drive a car from point A to point B. I told myself, okay, whatever, it's just driving. They came to pick me up in Garan, and when it was time to drive the car, well, I see armed guys getting into the car. I tell them, what the hell is this? They say, listen, it's simple. We're gonna go butcher a guy. What you want me to do? I'll call the guy who gave me the mission. I tell him I don't want to continue, but then he tells me, it's simple, you owe me money. He has to go kill someone. The guy is sitting in a bar and he's leaving soon. You're going right now. Bro, it's simple. Either you drive the car, the two guys get out and kill him, or they kill you. So I drive the car, and I was supposed to do just one mission, except then they had me drive a second time, and then I drove a third time. You see,
these missions as a driver make Mattéo rise in rank within the DZ Mafia. He officially joins a few team, meaning a team tasked with executing the clan's opponents.
They told me, now you drive one last time for us, and after that, you don't owe us anything anymore. Except when we arrived, the guys told me, well now bro, you're the one who's gonna shoot the guys. I told them no and everything. They said, look, it's simple. We know where you live, all of that. So I did it. I went, I killed. I did my first murder like that.
His first victim, young Ryan, clumsily shot in panic in the backseat of that car speeding down the highway.
After that, they contacted me. They came to pick me up in Garan, and they told me, now you're going to kill for us, and it won't be free stuff anymore. We're going to pay you. Either you kill for us, we pay you and you make money, or we kill you.
It's in this environment and under these conditions that Mattéo recounts sinking deeper and deeper into the world of narcosides. So is this the true origin story of the most lethal hitman in this Marseille gang war? A young man who simply had a taste for delinquency and kept sinking deeper and deeper into drug trafficking in the criminal underworld. A young man who had no choice and ended up committing the worst atrocities? When you look closely at Mattéo's behavior, you begin to doubt it. Would someone who only does this job out of obligation stage himself on social media? Would he brag about the assassination contracts he keeps stringing together, speaking into his phone camera with a tone that reveals the frenzy and adrenaline this activity gives him? Would he swagger during police interrogation, telling officers he would have shot them if he'd been armed at the time of his arrest? All these actions seem to expose just how hypocritical the excuses he gives to his girlfriend and to his brother really are.
He had money, stolen cars. I wondered how he could do all that, but I didn't think he could kill people. Then one day he told me about it. One day he came home and said, watch the news tonight, you're gonna be shocked. So I watched. but there was nothing special on TV, nothing on the internet, so I waited to see what would happen, even though I kind of thought he was bullshitting. But one day, I came across a snap. It said, Marseille, a body found in the trunk of a burnt-out car in La Bousserine. So I took a screenshot, and after a few days, I finally dared to ask him. I showed it to him and said, "Did you do this?" He answered, yeah, that was me, and he had a big smile. He was so proud. And then a few days later, one night he came home and showed me a video. He wanted to prove to me that he killed people, because at first, I didn't really believe him. He showed me the video where he's running after someone. The guy stops and raises his hands, and he kills him, then gets into the car. He told me it was him shooting in the video. I was shocked. I tried to lecture him, but not too much, because as soon as I said something, we'd argue. And he'd say he did whatever he wanted, because we'd never been there for him. That was his excuse.
Mattéo loves his new life as a big-time criminal, a life he had dreamed of ever since he first dove into delinquency and drug dealing. He has everything he always wanted, money in the respect of others, or rather, more than respect. It is fear that he now inspires. And how could it be otherwise, knowing he has coldly murdered several people in the past weeks? When he's out, Mattéo is always dressed in a new pair of TNs and carrying a Glock 19. Enzo says that Mattéo doesn't do this to brag.
He doesn't shout from the rooftops about what he does, but he likes people to respect his image. He likes being respected for what he's done, for the murders.
So, Mattéo does all of this just to gain respect and recognition? For that reason alone? One thing seems certain. Mattéo appears to have completely lost his sense of reality. Extreme violence and murder have now become an integral part of his lifestyle. Back to Monday, April 3rd, 2023, the day after Mattéo was arrested following the Juliet murders. Police officers arrive in Garan, in front of the family home. On the house's security cameras, Matteo's mother sees the officers approaching the door.
"Mom, there are police officers here, with Mattéo."
The mother had hoped that Mattéo had finally gotten back on track, but now she had proof of the opposite. History was repeating itself again. Was Mattéo going to end up in prison once more?
"Officers, what happened this time? Was he selling drugs? Do you think he hid weed in the house?" "We're from the judicial police, ma'am. It's more serious than weed." "What do you mean? What did he do?" "You need to get me socks and underwear, Mom. I'm going back to prison for a long time. I killed people." "What? What do you mean? What happened?" "I killed people. Several people."
At that moment, it was a black hole for Matteo's family. Their young boy, barely 18 years old, was a murderer. It was absolutely not the image one ever imagines when raising children. A few days after this arrest, Enzo becomes a target of armed men outside the Garan house. Fortunately, he manages to escape the gunfire. In the panic, the family leaves the house to move elsewhere. Matteo's mother and stepfather separate again. It's simply too much for them to bear. 8 months later, Enzo himself is arrested. He is suspected of assisting his brother by setting fire to the cars used in the Juliet murders. Enzo is afraid of Mattéo precisely because he knows what his brother is capable of. This is also why he never dared report him to the police or even to his mother.
"I hadn't seen him in 4 years. I wanted to reconnect with him, but in the end, he wasn't the person I thought he was. I'm angry at him because he didn't protect me from all this. If Mattéo had been killed, things would be simpler today."
Today, Mattéo is incarcerated in the Draganian prison, high in the arid hills of the Mediterranean hinterland. A single bed, a wardrobe, a fridge, a table, and a TV. That's all that can be found in the 9-square-meter cell he occupies in the isolation wing. Mattéo sees no one. His only social interactions are with the guard, who takes him out of his cell to supervise his 2 daily walks in the yard. The prison administration doesn't want to take any risk that he might reconnect with the DZ Mafia to continue his criminal activities. They also want to prevent him from being attacked by members of Yoda. But Mattéo does not seem affected by this total isolation from society. The crimes he has committed are among the most severely punished under the penal code: organized gang murder and repeat assassinations. These acts could earn him a life sentence, a penalty reserved only for the most extreme cases, but one that could be imposed on Mattéo for the multiple murders he has committed. Despite all this, the young man doesn't seem worried. When he talks about it with his brother on the phone, he massively downplays the sentence he could be given.
Enzo, you know what's the craziest part? There's so many people saying, oh, that's it, Matteo's never getting out. Or they say, yeah, Mattéo will be like 50 when he gets out. But what they don't know, Enzo, worst case scenario, you see, I'll get out of prison at 35. That's the absolute worst of the worst cases. You know what I mean? Bro, you're not getting out like that, bro. No, but at any moment, Enzo, the biggest sentence I can get is 30 years. You see, with sentence reductions,
Mattéo is clearly underestimating how long he will have to spend in prison. He throws around rough calculations to estimate how old he'll be when he's released.
with the sentence reductions, Enzo, my sentence will go down to 21 years. And after that, I'm eligible for adjustments. You see, Enzo, guys like me, they'll never let us finish our sentence inside. They'll put me on an ankle bracelet or semi-freedom or parole because they want to keep control over us to make sure that when we get out, we have a job, stuff like that. Enzo, worst case, I'm eligible for adjustments after 15 years. No, for real, worst case, I'm out at 35. And if I get 20 years, I'm out in 10. After my trial, I'll leave isolation. I'll move into the main block. That means there might be 2 or 3 fights, this and that, solitary confinement. You never know. Maybe my sentence won't go down to 15, but let's say 17 or 18 years. Hey, Enzo, normally after 7 years, I'll be able to get my day passes. I'll be 25. Yeah, I came in at 18. You do 18 plus 7, that makes 25. And the people in Garan can say whatever they want. All those people who talk, who act like gangsters, you think they won't still be around? They'll still be there, bro. And I swear on my mother, Enzo, I'm gonna get back at them. Just imagine, bro, the number of people I'm gonna fuck up. Bro, I swear on my mother, I'm gonna crush them. I'm gonna do something insane to them, my brother. There are too many enemies now. Hey, I'm gonna rent a McLaren, my dream car. On my life, Enzo, when I get out, I'm gonna rent one for 4 or 5 days, and you're gonna come pick me up in front of the prison with it.
At no point does Mattéo question himself. He's already planning his release. His time in prison is nothing more than a small setback in the grand criminal career he imagines for himself. Mattéo is completely detached from reality. He's strategizing ways to reduce his sentence by manipulating how the court sees him during his trial.
Enzo, let me tell you something. On the day of my trial, I'm gonna show up crying, Enzo. And when I say crying, I swear on my life, it's gonna be... You see, I'm gonna be in tears. I regret it. All the moms and everything. Yeah, I'm sorry for killing your kids. I cry in front of them. I don't give a fuck. You're something else, you. But I swear on my life, Enzo, that's how it works. And what do you think that mother's gonna say? Yeah, okay, I forgive you? Bro, apparently one of the dads you killed is a big name in Marseille. Everyone told me that, bro. They're saying they'll do everything so that when you get out, you die.
Unsurprisingly, in the continuity of the vendetta war raging in Marseille, members of Yoda are looking to eliminate Mattéo. But it also seems that some members of the DZ Mafia want him gone too. Here and there, people suspect that Mattéo has given up names and contacts inside the clan. But Mattéo doesn't care at all. He takes none of this seriously. For him, as soon as he regains even the slightest bit of freedom, he'll dive straight back into the criminal world. He's trying to get connected, meaning getting a phone smuggled into his cell, and he already imagines himself running operations from behind bars. He's thinking about all the money and weapon stash he hid in a secret safe house.
Just wait until I get connected, bro. I'll get you anything you want. I'll plug you in with all the right people. The money's hidden. Bro, you lose your mind. No one could ever find it. If I get out right now, I swear on my life, I'm buying RS3 in cash, a full RS3.
Mattéo tells his brother that there's another 500,000 euros involved. Enzo, however, says he has never seen a cent of that money. Apparently, it seems that Mattéo exaggerates all the profits he made from his assassination missions, especially considering the modest payouts usually given in this line of work. Mattéo continues to brag, trying to craft a legend of himself as a major criminal who succeeded in the narcotics world. It's clear that he takes immense pleasure in adopting this status, imagining his career as a kingpin, far beyond any financial gain he might actually earn. In a phone call recorded by the police a few months after his arrest, his girlfriend reproaches him for his obsession with the criminal world.
I'm telling you the truth, but it feels like you were fascinated by it. by the murders. Nobody forced you to make videos like the ones you posted on Snap, laughing and all. On my life, it's obvious you're fascinated by it. Like, even when you were bragging. Yeah, that's true. I'm not gonna lie, it's true. You're right.
The question remains, how did it come to this? At what point did things go wrong? At what point did things go wrong for it to come to this? For a young man just out of adolescence to find a sense of fulfillment in exercising his violence and in murder. How did it come to this? It's easy to point fingers at violent people, to label them monsters, to call them exceptions. It's easy to dehumanize them, to just think that something is wrong with them, and to blame it all in their supposed difference that makes them impossible to understand. But building your reflection solely on that seems lazy. So far be it from me to try to excuse Mattéo for his crimes by claiming that it's all society's fault or the environment in which he grew up. It would be utterly foolish to erase Mattéo's individual and obvious responsibility in this story, but it would be equally foolish to think he is the sole person responsible for this situation. The reasons behind this tragedy are obviously complex and multiple. To better understand all of this, we can try to take a step back and look at Mattéo's story. At the beginning, Mattéo was just a normal child. His family went through difficult times. His father abandoned him. All of this is sad, but unfortunately, it's not an uncommon situation. And not all children abandoned by their fathers end up as drug traffickers or hitmen. Clearly, this is not the main reason for his gradual transformation into the murderer he would later become. In adolescence, Mattéo sank into petty delinquency. Like any young person his age, he sought to prove his worth. He sought recognition. The problem here is that he looked for all of that in the wrong place, the world of drug trafficking. Clearly, a very bad choice on his part. His mother, overwhelmed by managing her family's life, didn't know what to do when the police arrested him and brought him home. In the despair of this situation, the decision was made to send him to a foster home, but he continued to sink into delinquency. He was then sent to prison, and as soon as he got out, he reoffended. He went back to prison and reoffended again just a few months later. Mattéo got caught in a cycle of crime and incarceration. Each relapse was more violent than the previous one. Drug trafficking, a knife fight, then possession of drugs and a firearm. Mattéo trapped himself in a vicious circle and never really showed any intention of getting out, which would culminate in a series of deadly shootings in the city of Marseille. This reminds us of an important point. Mattéo's prison sentences had no deterrent effect on his desire to pursue a career in organized crime. And even if Mattéo's case is exceptional, it still highlights once again the ineffectiveness of the French judicial and prison system. In France, as in most countries around the world, prison is seen as an institution that allows society to remove dangerous individuals and punish them for their crimes. Someone sentenced to prison is considered undesirable, someone without a future in the society that has chosen to exclude them. Prison derives its inmates of nearly all freedom. It locks them into a world confined by concrete walls and incredibly strict rules. It is true that this system can work for some delinquents and criminals who use their sentence as an opportunity to reflect and find the strength to prepare psychologically for life outside. But this is clearly not the norm. In France, about 1/3 of people released from prison return within a year, and after 5 years, this proportion rises to 2/3. It seems obvious that the prison system shows significant weaknesses in this regard. When Mattéo was released from prison for the last time, under judicial supervision in December 2022, a few months before the murders he would commit in La Juliette, his mother expressed her astonishment.
I'll be honest, I don't really know why they let him out at that time, when he still had to be tried in Paris. Above all, I think he needed help. But no, they let him out just like that.
It is clear that Mattéo shows psychological fragilities, a child ready to sell drugs, fight, assault with a knife, or even use a firearm. Can we really say this is a mentally healthy child? His mother clearly thought he needed additional support, psychological help. But in prison, the only hands extended to him were those of other inmates, notably the hand of a DZ Mafia boss who would invite him into the Marseille clan and ultimately turn him into a killer. At first, the French justice system deemed it appropriate to sentence him for his acts of delinquency, which is completely logical and understandable. But beyond that, it did nothing to help him stop. leaving him without any psychological support, without any reintegration follow-up. And this is where the limits of a purely punitive justice system become evident. In the end, we are dealing with a carrot and stick strategy, but without the carrot. When we see stories like this end lives, destroy families, and fracture society, one conclusion becomes clear. These tragedies could have been avoided. We could have done better. Yes, it is easy to rewrite history with ifs, but the prison problem remains, and no solution is currently being implemented to address it, except for toughening the detention conditions of prisoners. Perhaps it is time to reconsider this system and incorporate more rehabilitative and restorative justice policies.